Good day and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Isak van Niekerk and I'm based in the RIB Canny offices in Cape Town. I am involved in the testing, training and user support for Canny software. Today our focus is on the innovative feature in Canny's project control software that assists in the calculation of the carbon factor for projects. Let us explore how Canny project control software supports the estimating of carbon factors for a project. Candy focuses on the upfront embodied carbon, specifically the product stage, which is modules A1 to 3, as well as the construction stage, which is modules A4 to 5. Before importing carbon rates into Candy, they must be sourced and organized in an Excel table that aligns with your project scope and requirements. Carbon factor rates can be sourced from a range of reliable resources, including supplier-specific environmental product declarations, or EPDs for short, that will supply carbon rate information for mainly modules A1 to A3. It also can be sourced from the EC database maintained by the Building Transparency Organization, or from carbon databases such as the Inventory of Carbon and Energy, or ICE for short. It can also be sourced from Carbon and Price Book, included in the Civil Engineering Standard Method of Measurement, 4th edition, or the CES MM4. These are just a few of the widely used sources available. Important to note, when sourcing carbon factors, especially when using AI like Copilot or other databases, always verify the geographic relevance and data here to ensure alignment with your project's specific context and requirements. Importing carbon factors into Candy can be imported in two ways. First, a single summarized or combined carbon rate factor for modules A1 to 5 that can be imported per price code or per bill item. Secondly, directly into the resource list using one or more of the 4 available carbon rate columns. These columns are A1 to 3, which is the combined production carbon rate, column A4, the transport to site, column A5, the installation on site, or column A1 to A5, which is the total summarized rate across all modules. Let us first look at how to import carbon rates for resources. When importing carbon rates for resources, there are certain import rules to take note of on how Candy handles the data import for the resource list. To import carbon rates into Candy, the relevant resources must already exist in the Candy job and be assigned a valid resource code, which serves as a key reference for the import. Note that carbon rates are only imported or updated for simple resources. For complex resources, carbon rates are automatically calculated based on the associated simple resources used in their build-up. When individual carbon rates, that is rates for columns A1 to A3, A4 or A5, are imported, Candy sums them to populate the A1 to 5 total or combined column. If only a summarized total rate for the combined column A1 to A5 is provided, it can be imported directly into the A1 to A5 total column as a plug rate. But it's important to note, if both a total rate and individual rates are imported for resources, Candy prioritizes the individual rates. The summarized or combined total is then calculated from these inputs from columns A1 to A3, A4 and A5. These rules might be best explained in a practical example. To demonstrate how to import the resource carbon rates from an Excel file, we will be using a generic Candy job containing non-specific resources, price codes and bill items. Within the Resource Document Manager, we have pre-configured some layouts with relevant columns to support the demonstration of how to import the rates. These layouts were adapted from the default template, namely 1.10 Resource Carbon Analysis, and this template was customized to suit our requirements. With the resource list open, customize as required, showing the carbon rates columns, you can export this to Excel by simply going Tools and choose either Write to Excel, which is a fast method, or Export to Excel, which will open up Excel and populate the information inside the Excel file, as you can see there. On the screen, we currently have both the Excel file and the Candy application displayed. To demonstrate the previously mentioned rules, the Excel file has been set up as follows. The file includes rates for both simple as well as complex resources. Refer to the complex resource, code 520. Rates are distributed across 4 columns. The first 3 individual rate columns, A1 to A3, is one column, A4 the other column, and A5. Then in the combined column, there's also rates, which accumulates the rates from the individual columns. Resource code 1 and resource code 4 have rates populated in both the individual columns as well as in the combined column to demonstrate how this will be handled. We have introduced a counter type resource designated by resource code 999, which will be explained in more detail later in the presentation. Carbon rates can be entered manually as already entered for resources 9 to 12, so there's no need to demonstrate that. But carbon rates can also be imported from an Excel file as follows. There's 2 ways to get to the import menu. First, Tools, Import carbon rates from a file, or go to the A1, A5 column, where you can see the little indicator with the blue star indicates that there's column options. So right click on the header to make the column selected, and inside the right click menu you can also see import carbon rates. Let's use that method. Click on import carbon rates. It'll open up file importing document. You can browse to where you've got the carbon rates stored. Select the carbon rates and open them. The part will now be in the text file name. Start the import. Okay. The import document will open up and you need to make some choices. You will notice that above each of the columns is the word ignore. In the sample window is all the data that you're bringing in from Excel, and you must tell the computer which column must go where in Candy. So we want to import the second column, that is the resource code column. So highlight the resource code, click on the green. Then it will move to the next column. We don't want a description column. Let's skip all the columns, go back to this column here. That is allowable column A1 to A3, so select that, number 3. The word ignore gets replaced with A1 to A3. The next column is A4. And the column after that is A5 carbon rate. And the last column is the combined carbon rate. Right, we will also notice there's 2 lines in there that we don't want. It came in from Excel. So we're going to ask the computer to ignore the 2 lines. Right, you'll notice when you type it in, it grays out. Press continue. We warn you that although you might have A1 to A5 as well as the combined column, the A1 to A5 fields will override the combined rate field. So we say yes, we're aware of that. Resource is amended, complex is skipped, and the lines rejected. Right, once that comes in, there's also a document that tells you what was rejected. And as you can see, any new resources that didn't exist in the job will not be added. You have to first import the new resources as a normal resource. Refer to the help portal, how to do that. And then you also notice that any complexes that do have values next to them is also ignored. Let's close that. And now we can see what happened. Let's look at resource number 1. So the sum of that total is 9.9. where in A1 to A5 column we had a 10. So the 10 was ignored because we had, in the 3 individual columns, we had values, and that values is now summarized as 9.9. Same goes there. There was no A1 to A5 combined total, so it adds up, and you'll see the little green dot. If you hover your mouse on that, it displays that it is the sum of A1, A4, and A5. Right, as we mentioned, look at resource number 4. The same happened there. We had a value in A1 and A3, as well as in the combined column, a value of 8. That value didn't come through because of the rules, so only 6.2 came in, and that is the total that's displayed in the combined column. Once you've done that, you can calculate, and now you'll notice that complex 1 also now has values, A1 to A4, A5, and a combined value of 25.8 based on the symbols that's used inside the complex. Next, we're going to look at how to import carbon rates for price codes or bill items and see the rules applicable in that scenario. Carbon rates can also be imported for price codes to calculate and display the total carbon factor associated with the related bill items. On the screen currently is both the Excel file and the price code list for the current job. The Excel file was generated from a predefined screen layout document. As mentioned before, you'll set up the template and add and take away columns required, and then export that to Excel. The Excel file now includes the price codes that's applied in the job, and the associated carbon rates for each price code was entered, and these rates were sourced from external references mentioned earlier. The price code document shown below already reflects calculated carbon rates, and these rates were derived from the imported resource level carbon factors that we've just imported that contribute to each price code. To import the price codes, we've opened up a default document from the price code document manager. So we added new document, price codes and price code carbon analysis. We've already done that. Then we went and customized the document and removed the columns that we don't want and just leave the carbon rate columns there. Right, that document we've opened, and that's the one on the screen, and that's the one we also dumped to Excel to fill in the relevant carbon rates. Right, to import the carbon rates from the Excel file, do the following. Go to the combined column A1 to A5, right-click on the column, choose the option Import Plug Rate Columns. Right, it will open up your browser, browse to price code carbon factors, open that up. So as mentioned before, you need to replace the word ignore with the relevant column that you want to import the data into Candy. So in the first column, we'll use the price code. We'll skip these two columns. We go to the carbon rate column, plug rates, confirm that. In this case, we will only change the first line. And once we've got that, we can say continue. Okay, and notice carbon rates came in when we can calculate that. And what you will notice is that the carbon rate that was previously calculated for items is no longer calculated. So item A, item F, and G didn't have any carbon rates in the resource buildup, but item A has. Notice that it overrides the individual columns carbon and only displays the combined column carbon that was imported, the 31. However, if you clear the carbon rates, you will see that it goes and populates back the previous imported carbon rates. Okay, so you can also manually type in the carbon rate. So let's make that 30. And do you want to overwrite? Yes. And now it only has the plugged carbon rate. And then obviously you can calculate and the whole job will be updated. To recap, carbon rates for resources can be imported for the individual modules A1-3 to modules A5, or for the combined total column A1 to 5. However, if rates for both the individual modules and the combined total are present, the combined total will be overwritten with the sum of the individual modules. Note, only combined total rates can be imported for price codes, and it will override any existing individual module rates. Next, we'll use a sample job to see how to analyze the carbon rates that you've just imported. Let us consider a simple generic sample to illustrate the carbon analysis function in Candy. In this example, we use a small crusher building as a sample project. Bill items was created, and the quantity takeoff function in Candy was used to measure the associated quantities. Let's look at what the building looks like. So we're going to look at the quantity takeoff manager. There's the crusher building package. Let's open the package and see what it looks like. And on the screen is the takeoff application that's free together with Candy. So we've brought in a PDF drawing from the crusher building. Let's open that and see what it looks like. Let's look at the measurement folders that we've already been created. So there we've got a measurement for the site clearance, foundation excavation, concrete, both the surface bed and the first floor slab, and the columns. Those items were measured. The measurements were connected to the bill items via the takeoff sheets. Let's look at the site clearance. As you can see, there's a takeoff list, there's a site clearance, and it's connected to the bill quantity. That was transferred to the bill items in the BOQ, and the quantities were summarizing, consolidated, and that is what we see in here. The bill items were priced using worksheets. So let's open a worksheet, see how it was priced. There we can see the relevant resources. As you can see, it's highlighted in red, so that indicates it's a complex. So let's look at the laborer. The build-up of 160, 120. Let's drill down. If you double-click, it'll open up the next level of worksheet. It consists of a basic rate, an on-cost rate, and a travel allowance. The on-cost rate is a build-up. So let's drill down. 2920 was built up by the Holiday Fund Pension Scheme. And you'll notice that we've also now added a carbon counter factor. Now that was done on the lowest level of the complex, because carbon factors can only be allocated to simples and not complexes. So let's see what was done. So let's go back there. We've created a new resource called carbon counter laborer, and very important, the resource must have a rate of 0 because we're only interested in the usage. And then to indicate that it is a counter, we right click in the attribute column, we counter and set it as a counter, and then you'll see a letter C in the attribute column. So let's scroll up and see, let's just close a couple of things here, and let's go to the laborer. So let's close the font, temporary material. Right, so there's the laborer. Okay, as you can see, it's a complex. Now let's see where this laborer was used. So we cross-reference in all the bill items based on the bill quantity. And there is the relevant bill items where this laborer is used inside the worksheets, and all of those worksheets. The usage for each worksheet, in this case obviously usage per day, and the total usage is summarized, 3162. Right, so we see there. That's the 3162. The carbon factor that was entered or imported was 0.80, and there is the 0.80 times the 3162 will give you total carbon factor for the laborer on this job of 25.33 kilograms. Right, some other functions that you might find handy. If we want to look at the kilograms, we can graph the usage, let's say of all the items, based on the resource code or the resource description. Let's use the resource description. And there you can see a graph, and you can see from highest to lowest. You can copy it to a clipboard and use it in any one of your reports. You can also go and say, let's just look at the top 50%. Say OK. And now we've only got a selected view and graph of the top 50%. And we can copy that to the clipboard and use that. Another tool also available is the shell threshold visualization. So right click, select the shell threshold. Let's say we want to see everything above 1000 kilograms. Confirm. Click on the cell. Green is alright. Below the threshold, above the threshold is all the concrete items as well as the formwork items. To remove it, untick the box, clear, and OK. In Candy, allowable wastage can be incorporated directly into worksheet calculations. This allowable wastage can also be displayed on screen or in reports. To demonstrate this functionality, we have prepared a screen layout document that includes the relevant columns for both wastage and carbon-related values and amounts. We added some wastage columns, the allowable wastage. Added carbon columns that we want to see. And let's go and look at what we see. So there's the allowable wastage or the allowable wastage amount. There's the usage currently and the total allowable carbon factor in kilograms. So at the moment we see it's 14.4 tons or 14,400 kilograms. And that is including wastage, because we can see there bill BOQ only including wastage. As mentioned before, once you see a blue star, it tells you that you can change the columns and the contents of the column. So let's go and do that. Right click on the column, choose the column options menu. As you can see, include wastage is ticked. Let's exclude the wastage. Now the net amount comes down from 106,000 to 103,000 and the tonnage comes down to 13,500. Okay. So basically the 103 plus the 295 will give you the total including wastage. Just to prove it, let's go and include the wastage again. Right, and now we've got 106,000 and the carbon is 14,000 kilograms CO2e. So the carbon wastage for the wastage alone would be the difference between the 14,400 kilogram CO2e, including wastage, and the 13,500 kilogram CO2e, excluding wastage. In Candy, the carbon usage can be displayed on the worksheet as well. Let's close this resource document. Let's open up a bill document, open up a worksheet. At the moment we see the rate in the headers. Let's change that, clicking on View, Display Carbon Usage in the header. There's the carbon usage. And as you drill down through the different worksheets, that's complex worksheets for the tipper, wet and operator. If we drill down by double clicking on that, there's the build-up. And there's the carbon now for that specific complex. If we go to the driver, that's a complex as well. So double click, drill down, and we see the carbon unit. And if we drill down further to the cost, we also see right down to the carbon factor that we've put in. And there's the carbon unit for this specific complex worksheet as well. Let's close everything. In Candy, you've got unique ability to link the bill items to planning activities and so produce a forecast either by money and also now by carbon factor. So let's look at the program first. So we go to the planning module. There's a very simplistic program that was created. This program is already linked to the bill. So let's look at that. So click on link and forecast, document manager. And let's now go and look at the activities of BOQ allocation that has been done. So there you can see the activity and all the bill items that's linked to it. And obviously that creates the money, the net amount per activity. We can also see the forecast. So let's look at the budget forecast, bill with budget forecast. So there's the money forecast, money over time. We can also see the carbon forecast, bill with carbon forecast. We've just customized the document to suit the relevant requirements. So there you can see the customization that's been done. And now you can see the forecast over time. Let's close it up and look at the earthworks separately. There's the earthworks items. And here is the concrete and the formwork. And control space bar. You can also go and change, like a lot of changes here. Column properties as before. You can change the financial period. or the period that you want to look at, either last calendar day of the month, fixed day of the month, 25th, or any other options that you want there. Once you've done it, it's changed. So let's change it back. Last calendar day of the month. Okay. And you can also go and change what you want to see as far as the carbon is concerned. The combined carbon is displayed at the moment, but you can show the A1 to A3 only, or the A4 only, or the A5 only. What you can produce on the screen, you can also produce in the reports. So let's close this document and let's go to the report manager. Right, there's reports that we've already set up. So let's look at the carbon or forecast. Here you can see the bill items with the carbon forecast that you can print out. You can also have the carbon forecast summary. Okay. Now it's just a header summary, summarized by bill header. On the estimating side, if you open that report manager, there's a couple of reports already created for you. And it's just a matter of setting it up and showing it. There's also the carbon summary including wastage and the carbon summary excluding wastage. There's the summary. Okay, one thing that you need to take note of when you customize a report, you'll have the columns. You have the columns that you can add and remove. And you'll notice, like you had on the screen, that you have a little asterisk also with some of the columns. Remember the blue little star that you had? So that tells you the column has got options that can be changed. And that's where the new tab comes in, which says column options. And then you've got the relevant columns that do have the change asterisks available. And you can just right click in the options to change what you want to see: bill quantity, direct cost only, include wastage. For exclude wastage, if you untick the box. It's been set up as including wastage, and then obviously when you preview that, that will be including the wastage. Right, let's close that. Let's clear the screen and explore how Candy can be used to propose alternative methods and resources for minimizing the project's carbon footprint. When analyzing a project, there are several functions you can apply to help reduce its carbon footprint. One particular useful function is the use of a global variable as a switch to compare alternative construction methods. In this example, we have defined a global variable, RMC, under the price code definitions. This variable acts as a toggle to analyze the difference in both total project cost and carbon footprint when switching between site batching and ready-mix concrete. To enable this comparison, the worksheet includes calculations for both alternatives. The applied factor for the ready-mix concrete is multiplied by the global variable RMC, and since the RMC value is currently set to 0, all ready-mix rates evaluate to 0. Conversely, if the site batching calculation are multiplied by the factor 1 minus RMC, which then equals 1, this will result in the active values for the site batching resources. As a result, the current rate for this price code is 698.84. As the resource has been allocated carbon factors, the carbon factor per unit for this worksheet is 189 kilograms per CO2e. To simulate the impact of using ready-mix concrete, simply change the value of the RMC from 0 to 1. This switch will activate the ready-mix calculations and zero out the site batching values. Under this scenario, the rate for the same price code becomes 821.45, and the carbon factor per unit for this worksheet has now changed to 307 kilograms per CO2e. Let us now look at a live example to see how the switch affects both the carbon factors associated with the concrete price codes and the overall project footprint. Right, let's look at this job. Let's open up the carbon analysis, total only. So here we can see the total net amount for the project is 106,308, and the carbon CO2e is 14,454. As we're going to change the concrete, let's close the earthworks and just look at the concrete total. At the moment 45,722 and 12,145. Currently the value for the RMC switch is made 0, so that is why you've got that total. Let's change it to 1 and recalculate that. So now we want to see what happens if we ready mix. Say okay, go back here, you need to calculate button is red, click on calculate. There you've got the change. Contract went up to 108,314 and the combined CO2e went up to 19,891. Concrete value 47,728 and total combined allowable carbon CO2e went to 17,582. To apply the global variable switch, we incorporated all required resource rates and their associated carbon factors in the resource list for each method. Each method was then priced and included within all the concrete worksheets, allowing the values to be calculated for each option for all concrete worksheets by simply changing the global variable switch in the definitions. The result indicated that site batching concrete as opposed to using ready mix is the better option in terms of both cost efficiency and carbon footprint for the project. Candy includes a function that enables the submission of alternative tenders. In this simplified sample, the original conforming design consists of a concrete slab supported by concrete columns. We are proposing two alternatives. Option 1, a concrete slab supported by a steel frame. Option 2, a cross-laminated timber CLT slab supported by a steel frame. These alternatives are intended to explore potential reductions in carbon footprint. We also aim to assess the impact of each option on the overall monetary value of the project. In using the alternative tenders, first a parent job gets created. So here we've got the parent job already created. Under advanced alternative estimates, you define the alternative estimates, define your conforming job, you define the other two options in there, and then you decide if the options is changed by entering alternative quantities or factors. In this case, we choose alternative quantities as a normal quantity. Say OK. Then we went to the specialized bills, open up an alternative estimate parent only. We add the additional single brace steel frame items with their resources in their carbon factors, and obviously then that will zero out their conforming bit. And we add the cross-laminated timber and we add the relevant quantities, in this case 0 for the conforming bit and the 0 quantity for the concrete slab on a steel frame. And then we obviously alter the relevant concrete items with quantities as required. Once we've done that, from there we'll create first the conforming job. Look at the conforming job. Go in there, do the carbon analysis. Let's look at totals only. Once it's calculated, we look at the 106, which we had before. That's now the site batching that we decided, and the 14,445 combined total. Right? From the parent job, we create option 1. It's already been done. There's option 1. Let's go to the carbon and see what that's the result. Let's open that up. Option 1. The carbon footprint came down 13,280. But the bill amount went up to 345,945. Right? Let's look at option 2. So let's go back. Option 2 is created from the parent job. That's the CLT slab on steel frame. Let's go and look at the end result for the carbon. So there we have 8,800 for the carbon. It came down quite dramatically, but the amount went up to 446,260.38. In comparing the conforming job with option 1, the results indicate a carbon footprint reduction of just over 1,000 kilograms CO2e. However, this comes at a significantly higher overall project cost. Option 2, by contrast, offers a substantial reduction in carbon emissions relative to the conforming job, but also results in a high total project value. This presents a compelling dilemma. Should one prioritize environmental benefits over financial cost, or the reverse? A decision must be made, and the outcome will reveal which holds the greater influence, moral conviction or monetary constraint. Please contact your local RIP Candy offices for more information. If you do not have Candy yet and are interested in a free evaluation copy of the software, contact any of our offices or go to the RIP Candy website as indicated to download a free evaluation version of the software. Note that the data accumulated during the evaluation period will be available in the licensed version of the software should you decide to continue with the software. Keep in touch with our latest news, announcements and upcoming events by following us on our social pages. Search for RIB Software on Facebook and LinkedIn or scan the relevant QR code currently available on the screen to stay connected. We hope you enjoyed this webinar and found it insightful. Should you require any further information, kindly contact your local RIB Candy offices. Thank you for attending and enjoy your day.